Hello again, everyone. In today's lecture, we will continue with one of the concept that we had already discussed in one of the previous lecture. So what you have learned is that there are three different types of a function. One is called as the built-in or the standard library function, where what happens is when you use this function, you don't have to install them separately. They come pre-built and pre-configured when you install your Python software. Example of a built-in or standard library here is this one, input and the print function. And you remember that a function is any name followed by a bracket. Any name and then followed by a bracket like this one here will be treated as a function. So this is one of the function input. Another one function is a print. In here you don't have to explain anything to the interpreter. The moment you include a function input, your interpreter directly understands that you need to input something from the keyboard. Likewise, when you include print, the interpreter understands that whatever is included inside the double quotation mark, that needs to be printed. Right? So these two here are the example of your built-in or your standard library function, which are already defined or already mentioned inside your software. Right? So you don't have to mention anything separately for this. First one is the input and the printf. Second one, okay, we'll talk about the second one in details later on. We'll continue first with the third one here, user-defined function. We have already discussed in details for the user-defined function, where I mentioned that a user-defined function always have a function call and a function definition. This is where your main program starts, and you can leave it here or you can include it inside the def main. And so this here is your function call. It's a name followed by the bracket. So when my interpreter comes across this, it'll go and search for the name which have exactly the same name as this one. Okay, the function which have exactly the same name as it. So in here, it happens to be this one here, name. And if we recall, user-defined function here is a user specifically designed program. So it is designed, to meet the specific need of a user. So in that case, you can include whatever you want here, entirely up to what you program, what you want to include. In my this case, I just want to include this two simple example where I'll be printing this two line. I don't want to carry out any actual operation. So I'm printing this two line. So this two line will be printed, and then after that the order will be passed back to the function call. So this is your user defined function, which we had already discussed before. So it always have a function definition which start with a def followed by the function name, and it always have a function call. Now in this lecture, we will discuss in details more about a function definition, function defined in modules, or what we also call as a packages. Now when you need to use this function here, okay, example that I have taken here is your POW function. Now this is a function, okay, it should be MATH. This is a function POW. Now if I just include POW, my interpreter will not understand what is this, because POW is not a standard library function, nor it is a user-defined function. It's not a user-defined function because what happened is I've included something along with it. If maybe it is just POW, then my interpreter might take it as a user-defined function. But because I've included some extra thing along with POW, that means this one, then interpreter knows that this is not the first type of function, this is not a user-defined function. So it will include this in the second category, which is the function defined in modules. Now if I want to include this name here, POW, fine. And if I want to join it, I cannot just include it as it is. So what I need to do is, I need to include a library that mention what exactly is this function. My interpreter need to understand what is the meaning of this. So in order to include that, I have to include the modules or the package for POW, which is math. Only when I include this entire thing, my interpreter will understand, okay, that this is a power function which comes from a library called as the math, or the package called as the math. So for that, what I need to do is, I need to include this. This is a header file here. I need to import the function math, and I need to import it so that when I use POW in the program, my interpreter will not get confused. So now we have math, which is a module, dot followed by POW. It's always joined by the dot notation here. This is what we call the dot notation. We have other modules or the package followed by the object. Then when this is included, then your interpreter will understand that this is a power function which comes from some header file or some packages called as a mat package or a mat module. And then find the value, the actual meaning of this will be available inside this library. So you'll go search for the actual function for there, the meaning of that function from there, and then in here you'll start including it here in the function. Fine. So other than POW, your this mat module also includes this object. These are the list of objects that are included here. I just include mat followed by the dot operator, and in here these are the list of objects that is mentioned inside the mat function. We will discuss about this again in detail. Okay, so this is the example of the second category of a function here, which is called as a function defined in modules, where it is not in a standard library function like input and print. It is not a user-defined function which is defined according to the need of a user, but this is also an inbuilt function, but it does not come pre-installed with your standard library function. Whenever you need to use them, you also need to include the library or the modules or the package that includes the actual meaning of this function. So because of that, to use POW or say SQRT or the value of pi, for example, or to calculate the logarithm, you have to include the modules MADH. So this is second type of modules. Now, okay, to understand this better, we will be looking at the different ways of including the module in your program, starting with the first one, which is to import the entire modules. So to import the entire module, that means you will want to import the entire object that is included inside a module. Example is like when I have man, which is a module. Now I want to be able to use all this object. Find each and every one of this object that is included inside function. This is the meaning of the first category when you want to input the entire import here the entire module. Now the syntax for this is import, which is a keyword, followed by the actual modules that you want to use. So it's import followed by this module man. Other than this, you have many other modules or packages, example of which find if you want to include more than one module, you can include it using one import function, or you can use it include it using a separate import function. Now if you want to include it using just one import function, you separate it with a comma. There's another module by the name of Numpy. Numpy here deals with arrays. When you want to include different type of operation inside an array, then you will be using a Numpy. Fine, array can be either a list, it can be your tuple, fine, it will be your string, your dictionary. So this is when you will be using the modules Numpy. Okay, for now we'll concentrate only on math. So that is what you include. You import math and then you use it in the function. Okay, the module name followed by dot operator followed by the function that you want to use. I mean, this case the object. Likewise, I have used the power of here man dot POW and then include what need to be included. This is one way of importing the modules when you import the entire thing. Second category is when you don't want to import the entire modules. Let me put in comment now this one, but you want to import only a specific category from that module. So in that, the syntax will be from the modules import only the object that you need to use. And we don't want to waste the memory space by importing each and everything. And you can import everything at once, but you'll be wasting your memory space. So in that case, what we have is we will import only the actual object that is needed. So in case for this program, I need only the object PIN SQRT. Right? So there is no point in calling each and every object that is inside the math module. So for that, you have from the modules man, I want to import only the object pi and square. Right? I can include only one if I want. And if you want to include more than one object, separate it by a comma and then include it here. So if you want to include the power as well, that can be done. Right? not a problem. I'm getting an error here because purely I have not used it anywhere in the program. Okay, let me remove this. Now, see here, the difference between this one and the previous one is that in the previous example, I need to include the modules man dot operator and or dot notation followed by the object name. Whereas in this case, since I've already included from math, I said that from math I want to import this. So this math package is already included in your program. So what you want to use is you want to use only the pi object and the square root. So you can directly use pi without having to include the module name math.pi. Likewise in square you don't have to use math.square anymore. It will be square directly. This is one way of importing everything. Or you can also import the entire object inside math module using from math import start. The meaning of this is that whatever is there inside your math module, just import that and include it in your function. And this is the same like importing the entire module. Fine. So this is how you import different object. Different object from the modules. You cannot use this. Like normally what you include inside math, that also since it has been used over and over again, so that has been treated as part of a standard library file. Whereas if you want to use say numpy, okay, there's few example here. Numpy, which deals with arrays, operation related to array. SciPy, which deal with scientific operation that you want to carry out any scientific or any mathematical operation. And this, okay, not math, it's the matplotlib. This one is used for plotting say graph. For this are used for plotting tools like charts, plotting graph inside your program. In that case, you will need to import this. You cannot use those function directly, but you need to import it. Now, the difference between this three here then built-in, you don't have to install anything separately. You just mention the function name, that's it. You will use it directly in the program. User defined function, whatever you want to include, you'll have to define it. You have to write a coding for that. Fine. Whereas in case of a function define, this function little bit like that of the built-in or standard library, where you don't have to POW here. You don't have to write a coding for it. The only difference is that you cannot use this directly, but you need to call a separate module or a separate packages for using it in the program. In input, I don't have to call anything. Whereas when I want to use the function define module, I need to call the library function. Now, few of the advantages of using a function defined in modules is this. In case of a user defined function, see, you need to write the coding for this, right? So if I want to use the same thing in a different program, I have to write the coding over and over again. Whereas function defined module here, okay, can be reused in any other program. You don't have to write a function. You just have to import that function using import whatever is the module name, and then you can use it in a program. No need to write the coding, just call it, that's it. And at the same time, what happens is your function defined modules here, most of it need to be installed separately. That means when you install, like for example, your numpy is SciPy and your matplotlib. This does not come pre-installed. Math, it comes pre-installed. Whereas for the rest, you will have to install it separately. And we'll see how to install all this, but this have to be installed separately and does not come pre-installed with your software. Remember that. In built-in function, this is already installed. In here, you will have to install any of the modules or what we call as packages that you want to use in the program. You need to install that. User defined function, you don't have to install anything because you will be writing an entirely new coding. Whereas in function modules, the same coding can be reused over and over again in any of the program. You don't have to rewrite or recreate the same program. So with this, we stop here for today. Thank you very much.